Hey, welcome, guys. As hard to believe, but as a means of exercise, I ride my old beach cruiser here in downtown Salt Lake City, and I head out to the west or to the north, and I ride the bike 5 to 6 times a week. The road I take is kind of rough hewn and has broken glass and rocks and all sorts of stuff, and I had to fortify my tires with these inserts so that I would stop getting these frequent flats. And maintenance of the bike is in top shape and for the rides, and it looks from all appearances to be roadworthy. And so have you ever looked at another person and you just assess them as having it all together and being equipped to handle life? Have you ever looked at a homeless person begging for money? Have you ever looked at them and thought, get a job? You know, you should be able to get a job. It should be easy for you. I can get a job. You can get a job. You look fine. Or if you've had a friend who struggles with mental illness, like depression, and they're like not overcoming the depression, and you're like, come on, get out of bed, dude. It's been a long time. How long are you going to let this thing crush you? You're young, you're healthy, you're smart, you can do it. You know, make something of yourself. It's kind of like the thing that we do, especially here in America. Well, that's the way someone might look at my bike. When you look at it, it appears to have the ability to move a person from one place to another and under the pedal power and steering ability of anyone who's using it. And so I thought it was. And so I went on a recent bike ride, and I'm going I go 6 miles out or 5 miles out, depending. And all of a sudden, never happened before, my chain came off, and abruptly, without warning. And so the chain had recently been tightened and oiled and everything else. So I was sure it wasn't caused by any defect. So there's a chain guard on the bike to protect my legs from hitting it or whatever. So I didn't know what it was. So I put the chain back on and I started to ride, and boom, within, less than a minute, it came off again. So I did that again and again, maybe 2 or 3 times, and I got really frustrated, and I thought, while I spun the pedal, I thought the chain is just sort of nicking the chain guard. So I took a tool I carry with me and I removed the chain guard, set it at the side of the road, and I spun the chain on the sprocket with my hand, and I said, it looks good. So I started riding again, and this time a little bit longer time passed, maybe 3 minutes, and then it came off again. And I was really exacerbated. I mean, it was really bugging me. And so I sat down, and I'm not naturally mechanical, but I had to use my deductive reasoning, which is limited, to try to figure out what is going on. So I examined everything about the bike that looks so perfect and rideable, and try to see why is the mechanism that propels me forward derailing and making my progress ineffective. And so I systematically tested everything, and I tested the chain on the small sprocket at the back, and that was working as I slowly turned it. Nothing amiss. And then I put the chain on the big sprocket on the front, and I turned it. And as I turned it with my hand, it stayed on. And I was attempting to get back on the bike and try again. But I decided to check again a little bit more closely. And it took a great deal of concentration to look at that giant sprocket. And I noticed as I spun it, looking over it, it was like the sprocket was like this spinning, and I was here looking down on it. I noticed that there were a couple teeth in the sprocket, just a couple, that were barely off center. Those teeth had somehow become unaligned. And every time that the sprocket and the chain would go around, and the chain would come off the sprocket so it could go to the back, that sprocket would go up. And when those teeth had to meet the chain again, they were off just enough. You could barely perceive it. The chain would derail. So I saw it, and I got the chain, and I got the sprocket, and I got a tool, a piece of metal actually, and I bent with all my might to get those little teeth back into some semblance of alignment with all the teeth on that sprocket. And it took me some time, but I finally got it. And as I got back on the biking road, the chain stayed on. And I thought about the principle of people, that we look at them and they appear to have two wheels, a chain, sprockets, pedals, handlebars, and enough a frame to move them forward. We think by looking at them, they're fine. But if there's just a couple sprockets in their mind that are off, they don't have the capacity to move themselves forward through life. Their mind, as the scripture says, needs to be renewed somehow, either by the Spirit and or with medication, counseling, and maybe they'll never be right. But as long as that sprocket has a few teeth that are out of alignment, they're going to keep getting derailed and they'll never make forward progress. And it was a reality check for me, because I have a tendency when I drive through the city to see homeless people and to get really mad at them. And I realize that many of them are there for reasons that I can't see or explain, but their sprocket is bent a bit. I know there's some who are out there, they just want to be rebellious, and maybe that's a bent sprocket too. But I think most have addiction problems, mental health issues, and we need to keep that in mind when we look at them or other people who aren't able to get themselves moving and going through life. They need a sprocket adjustment, and that we would pray for them and we would be kind to them and we would have patience and more long suffering with their plight, even if we can't see the defect. Perhaps we can be more compassionate. The scripture is clear that all human beings need to have their mind renewed. Sometimes it's sufficient for people to have their mental sprocket realigned by just having a friend, being able to talk, reading the scripture. Sometimes it requires physical hard wiring through medication or counseling or other treatments. But the point is, if we encounter somebody in our lives who are unable to move themselves forward, it just may be that their sprocket is greatly or minimally or just barely out of line, and that is what they need. Have a great week. Love you.